Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm going to be doing another update on the Israeli war that's going on. It's November 15th. The markets have already opened. It's about 10:30 or so, just after 10:30. The Dow is up about 140 at this moment, and the S&P 500 is up 18. Markets are doing pretty well. The S&P 500 is trading above the 4,500 mark, which is exactly what I've been saying about the fib sequence that I've been showing people for almost 6 months now. So I'm going to be doing something new with this broadcast, and that is I am simultaneously playing it on X, or the former Twitter, through Spaces. So let's see how this works. It's the first time I've done it, so I'm not sure about the quality of the broadcasts or Spaces, but let's do this. Okay, so the updates on the war effort here. I play different, for the ones that don't know, I play different videos and comments. You may not like what I have to say, but I really don't fucking care. Now I'm going to play different shows here. The first show is from France 24. This was published about 3 hours ago, and it's dealing with the serious warnings of the French ambassadors in the Middle East on Macron's policies.
The images of war, the graphic images of war, are having an impact on public opinion the world over. This Tuesday, more than 400 U.S. civil servants, including political appointees, have sent a letter to U.S. President Joe Biden protesting his support for Israel. They say, the New York Times is saying this reflects growing internal dissent over the administration's support of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. For more, let's cross now to Georges Malbruno, senior correspondent for French daily newspaper Le Figaro. You have a front-page story this Tuesday in your broadsheet about dissent within the ranks here in France among the diplomatic corps. First off, your reaction, before we delve into what's going on here in France, your reaction to the fact that the civil service in the U.S. is now starting to waver. Georges Malbruno, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, I didn't hear your question.
The question was your reaction to the fact that over in the U.S., the civil service is starting to waver with this letter that's been sent to Joe Biden.
I noticed that this morning, and I was...
For the ones that don't know, I interrupt these broadcasts, just to do commentary. We are seeing a battle of the wills on a spiritual level, and we need to stay steadfast in this understanding that ultra-liberalism will eat its own tail, and that if we try to placate to emotional fallacies and not get the job done that should have been done 50 years ago or even 70 years ago, and kick the can down the road for some sort of political expedience, will lead to further death, destruction, and mayhem in the world. And when you have these individuals that are policy wonks in the international community that want to kind of, quote, de-escalate the situation, they don't realize that you're not going to reach homeostasis in the region, and that unconventional means of warfare will be easier to obtain in the future by terrorists. And that the death and destruction, the probability of it, will increase by doing ceasefires, will increase if we don't get the job done. And that is rooting out Hamas, rooting out Hezbollah, and destroying Iran. and this is, I've done many shows now about the conflict with Israel in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And there seems to be a common theme, and that is the ultra liberal tries to get the conservative to jump into this emotional fallacy that de-escalation in the region is the best policy. But yet, de-escalation in the region has only led to further conflict, further destruction, and a terrorist group that is getting more emboldened, more sophisticated, and it's going to be harder to root out.
And I was not surprised, but there is I noticed quite a big difference between the situation in France and in US. In US, I've read that Anthony Blinken said to the diplomats who were behind this decent note, we are going to listen to you. In France, the answer I got yesterday from the Elysee and from the Quai d'Orsay is not at all this kind of ability to listen. They told me that they don't want President Macron receives a lot of notes, and it's one among others, and situation has changed, etc. So
yeah, because just to be clear here, one is a public letter sent to Joe Biden, and the other is a diplomatic cable. We haven't seen, you've seen it, but I haven't. The diplomatic cable. And that diplomatic cable, thus, is by working ambassadors, working diplomats.
Exactly. We have around 10 or 12 current French ambassadors, mostly in the Middle East, but probably 1 or 2 in Maghreb, which sent collectively, who wrote and sent collectively a diplomatic cable, kind of decent note to the Quai d'Orsay, the French Foreign Ministry, and the Elysee, saying, regretting that the French position is not well understood now in the region, that the image of France has been degraded, and the credibility of the French policy also has been damaged, because of the recent position taken by Emmanuel Macron in the war between Hamas and Israel. It's the first time in the last 30 or 40 years that this kind of initiative, collective initiative taken by a group of around 10 ambassadors in function is taking place. This is the first time. So it's a serious warning. Meaning that the French policy, there is some disagreement. In fact, there is big disagreement. You probably know that the Quai d'Orsay has been marginalized by the Elysee for the definition and implementation of the French foreign policy. And what I've heard from people in the Quai d'Orsay, like many diplomats are supporting this decent report because they feel that the current French policy towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a little bit biased and towards Israel, and they want Macron to come back to a more traditional line, which is a line of the more balanced position as it was, of course, during Jacques Chirac.
Now, let's be honest, all right? Traditional policy in the Middle East for the last 50 years has been a failure. Yet, this particular senior correspondent that's talking on France 24 is promoting continual failure. Let's continue the failure of a 50-year policy instead of getting the job done and rooting out Hamas, rooting out Hezbollah, and fighting back against Iran because they're the funders. You get to the root cause. Same thing, same problem that we've had in the last crisis. If you don't get to the root cause, further damage takes place on people's lives. What's the root cause? The root cause is Iran is funding Hezbollah and Hamas. Why? Because they want to control the region, because it's a Shia and Sunni fight. In addition, the Israelis want the Temple Mount. Why? Because they need to rebuild the temple. So the only way that you're going to get homeostasis in the region is actually going back to the biblical borders of Israel, which is a lot bigger than what it is right now. And set in motion the rebooting of the temple. But instead, what we have is we have these some contemporary mindset, some kind of this liberalism that's going to the extreme, placating to a bunch of terrorists. You know, and let's be frank, right? When has the French ever really gotten things done? You know, they're wishy-washy.
Of course, during Jacques Chirac and even after with Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande.
Okay, so do they feel as though the balance is being redressed, what with Emmanuel Macron hosting that humanitarian conference last Thursday, and then the interview with the BBC, where for the first time he explicitly called for that ceasefire?
Yes, true. They told me that they noticed that especially the last interview to the BBC.
Let's have a ceasefire. Did Hamas get rooted out of Gaza? No. Do you think that we'll have more terrorism 5 years down the road? Yeah. Did Israel fall to the pressure of the international community back in 2008 and didn't get the job done? Yeah. Did Israel fall to the pressure of the international community in 2006 and didn't get the job done? Yeah. Did Israel fall to the pressure of the international community in 2014 and didn't get the job done? Yeah. And each time, there's been more death and destruction. The only way to solve this problem is to go full out. Get the job done.
To the BBC is probably a signal, according to them, that Emmanuel Macron understood the seriousness of the situation, and they were happy about that. We have to understand that since the beginning there was warnings. There were warnings from from many countries in the Middle East, from many French ambassadors in the Middle East, saying that the position of France is, as I told you, is not well understood. And mainly there was this French idea made by Emmanuel Macron during his trip to Israel. You remember probably.
Let's look back at that contemporary history. Why should the Israelis even give a fuck what the French think? It was Syria and Lebanon that they're involved in. You know, what it is it's weapon sales. It's, you know, this old style colonialism that goes all the way back to World War I. But the bottom line is this: we have terrorists that can get weapons of mass destruction now. The barriers of entry for chemical and biological warfare is much lower than radiologic. And that if we don't go full out and get the job done and root out Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, this is not going to end. And there's going to be more death and destruction around the world if this is ceasefired and kick the can down the road for another 20 years.
When he said, I want to create an extension of the international coalition against Daesh to Hamas. Everybody was extremely
So let
surprised.
me ask you about that, George, because he quickly backpedaled on that. Did he? Are they angry because he kind of shot from the hip, or are they angry because they weren't consulted?
Well, first of all, the GETTR was not at all associated with this idea, and even I am probably sure the diplomatic cell, the diplomatic team around Emmanuel Macron was not really associated because this idea was not at all fit to be implemented. Even Benjamin Netanyahu didn't want this idea to be implemented. Of course, the Arab states neither. When Emmanuel Macron came just a few hours after launching this idea to Amman in Jordan, King Abdullah was extremely surprised. I had Ayman Safadi a few hours before the trip, the Jordanian foreign minister, who told me it's unbelievable, this kind of idea. So there was this first idea, which the French ambassador in the Middle East were extremely surprised by this idea. So the French position...
He backpedaled on that, but is the bigger problem not, for instance, when there was the strike on the hospital, when the hospital was hit, and there were protests throughout the Arab world, we saw in places like Tunis that the protests didn't happen in front of the U.S. embassy, they happened in front of the French embassy. Is it more that, the France being tarred with the same brush as the U.S., as Germany, in their support of Israel?
Exactly. One ambassador, the French ambassador in Middle East, told me that France now is associated with UK and US as part of the genocide, according to the press. Some French ambassadors have problems now to get access to the authorities where they are. And even there is one ambassador who got some death threat. So it's a reason why there is a kind of dissatisfaction strongly. We will see.
Will there be consequences from this diplomatic cable?
I think it's huge consequences, but in terms of short-run consequence, I don't think that Emmanuel Macron will change his path, even though he got the message. I am sure he got the message. But as you know, he has a way of to conduct the French foreign policy a little bit strange. We always, as we say in French, en même temps, always in the same time. But at least these 10 or 12 ambassadors wanted to send a signal that the situation is serious and French position is damaged because of this, kind of U-turn of the French foreign policy, and the signal has been sent. We'll see if there is any...
what happens.
So for the ones that don't understand why the French are so involved with this, all right now, is that they're worried about a Northern Front war, and Israel's going to kick ass in Lebanon and knock certain targets out of Syria. And that's why they're involved. They don't give a shit about Gaza, other than selling weapons.
And we'll see what happens. Georges Malbruno, there's a woman in the middle in all of this, and that's the foreign minister. In the past, French foreign ministers, some of them have had outside stature. We've had former prime ministers like Alain Juppé and Fabius who've had the foreign ministry portfolio. Catherine Colonna, where does she lie? Is she considered by the diplomats as one of theirs? She's after all worked at the foreign ministry before, or is she considered as working for what the French call le chateau, the Élysée Palace in this one?
The Catherine Colonna is a very well-respected diplomat, career diplomat who knows very well the diplomacy. The problem, say, she has been marginalized by the Élysée and mainly by also the diplomatic team of Emmanuel Macron. And she has not a lot of power regarding the implementation of the French foreign policy. That's very clear, and it's known by many, of course, diplomats and even by many journalists. So it is the situation is that the top of the French power has gathered all the power, and the French foreign ministry has been weakened for years and years, and now we have an evidence that the situation is quite serious.
Georges Bruno, one quick final question for you, because your remit is covering the Middle East, covering the Gulf states, and when you see that the pressure is growing, when there's domestic pressure on Israel's allies, like you've just described here in France, like we described at the outset in the United States. Right now, how long can the military campaign, politically speaking, can Israel ignore that?
No, I don't think they can ignore that, and we've seen the last statement of Joe Biden saying that he believes that there will be an agreement conferred.
We are falling in the same trap that happened in 2006, 2008, 9, and 2014 in terms of trying to root out the terrorism that is in Gaza. And these policy wonks in the international community think that you're going to use some sort of Westphalian concept of trying to get peace in the Middle East is going to fail, and it's going to get worse. And all the data points are showing that each one of these conflicts on both sides, Israel and on the Palestinian side, that there's more death and destruction. Each one of these conflicts, it escalates. And we're moving towards unconventional means. And these individuals, the terrorists, are going to be able to procure them. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And it's so easy to fall into emotional fallacy and say, just give peace a chance. The bottom line is this. There are people out there from a certain soul root that are nothing but murderers. They happen to be from Ishmael and Esau. It's time to root them out.
Will be an agreement concerning the hostages. Probably there will be a kind of pause or in the strikes, and Israel has now a limited time to try to achieve its military and political goals. But I do that they will succeed by eradicating, as they said at the beginning, Hamas. We'll see.
Senior correspondent for Le Figaro, Georges Bruno, many thanks for being with us here on France 24.
Okay, so that was France 24, the English version. I watch many different news, going all the way from Al Jazeera to CNN to France 24, I-24, DM or DW, it's DW. A lot of different ones. So it's important to survey the whole landscape to get a pulse. But beware, the Westphalian concept of peace negotiations is not going to work well in the biblical context that we're dealing with here. And this war started, for the ones that don't know, this war started right at the end of a very important series of holidays for the Jewish people. Now, everyone in the world is being judged. Humanity is not moving in the right direction. And there has to be a cleansing because of it, unfortunately. But, the ultra-liberal out there, just give peace a chance. The ultra-liberal out there saying, oh, Israel's killing all the babies in the hospital, even though Hamas has dug into the hospital. And there's evidence to show, inconclusive, but there's evidence to show that they were actually storing the hostages in the damn basement of the hospital. And they're going to be doing DNA testing to prove that out. But the ultra-liberal wants to use the emotional fallacy and focus on the children that have died in the war on the Palestinian side. But the ultra-liberal doesn't tell you that their policies since the 1970s have murdered 60 million children through abortion. And we're supposed to use the philosophical framework of an ultra-liberal? Next, the BBC.
We start with the developing situation at Gaza's largest hospital. In the last half hour, the Israeli military has confirmed its operation against Hamas at the Al-Shifa hospital is still currently underway. Israel says the hospital conceals an underground command center used by Hamas, which is designated as a terrorist organization by the United Kingdom, United States, and several other countries. It's a claim doctors there deny. Meanwhile, in the US, the White House and the Pentagon say they now have intelligence that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad are operating from tunnels below hospitals, including Al-Shifa, and that they're also storing weapons there. It's the first time they have backed up Israel's claim to new intelligence.
And the Indonesian hospital in Gaza that was funded by NGOs in 2010 was built on top of an existing tunnel system to hide it. And Amnesty International doesn't want to say anything about that. The World Health Organization doesn't want to say anything about that. People need to start waking up.
Despite its new intelligence, the US says hospitals and patients must be protected. In a tweet, the Israel Defense Forces said, "We can confirm that incubators, baby food, and medical supplies brought by IDF tanks from Israel have successfully reached the Shifa hospital. Our medical teams and Arabic-speaking soldiers are on the ground to ensure that these supplies reach those in need." The Israeli military said its actions at Al-Shifa are precise and targeted. The Gaza Strip has been under siege by Israel Defense Forces since Hamas launched its attacks in Israel on the 7th of October. Our correspondent in Gaza, Rushdie Abu-Aluf, has spoken to an eyewitness at the hospital.
I made another contact with the eyewitness inside the hospital. He said he saw 6 tanks inside the hospital and about 100 Israeli commandos, soldiers. They stormed the main emergency department of the hospital. He said one person of them was speaking in Arabic, shouting at the people, "Don't move, don't move." And then they entered the hospital after 4 days of besieging the hospitals with tanks from all around it and cutting access in and out. Today, the BBC was told by 2 eyewitnesses inside that the Israeli soldiers are storming 5 buildings of the hospitals. One of the witnesses, he just told the BBC that I saw 6 tanks and about over 100 Israeli commandos unit entering the main department emergency room, and they were shouting in Arabic, "Don't move, don't move." He said there was some shooting around, and they fire a smoke bomb in the outskirts of the hospital, and then they started to move inside.
Well, thousands of people are believed to be in the complex. Here's more from our correspondent, Yolande Nell, who's in Jerusalem.
We're still relying on some eyewitness accounts from inside the hospital that tell us how in the dead of night, Israeli forces entered. There were, they say, 6 tanks that went through into the front of the compound, more than 100 commandos, some of them masked, who were shouting in Arabic, don't move," as they entered the emergency department. This account from an eyewitness whose report we can't independently verify at the moment. But it's very clear that Israeli forces are on the premises working there. There was also someone from the Hamas-run health ministry who was a time ago in another television interview who said that Israeli forces have gone down into the basement of the hospital.
Let's be clear. If the Israelis are going into the hospital, they got intel that either Hamas fighters are there and or the hostages are in the basement. But they won't. BBC and of course Al Jazeera won't say that because everything that is wrong with this war must be the Israeli fault. That's the problem with these news organizations. They just keep on, they keep on blaming everybody else.
They saw 6 tanks inside the
everybody else.
Arabic shouting at the people.
I lost my track, my thing here. Okay, here we go.
Witness accounts from inside the hospital that tell us how in the dead of night Israeli forces entered. There were, they say, 6 tanks that went through into the front of the compound, more than 100 commandos, some of them masked, who were shouting in Arabic, don't move, as they entered the emergency department. This account from an eyewitness whose report we can't independently verify at the moment, but it's very clear that Israeli forces are on the premises working there. There was also someone from the Hamas-run health ministry who was speaking a short time ago in another television interview who said that Israeli forces have gone down into the basement of the hospital. This, of course, is where Israel has been saying consistently that it believes that Hamas has an underground tunnel complex it's been using, as well as some of the buildings of the hospital. It says as a kind of command and control center. That is denied by Hamas, but also
of course Hamas is going to deny it. But for the last 3 weeks that I've been covering this, there have been at least 50 times where the ultra liberal that's trying to spin it that this is some sort of Israeli forced aggression. What happens is that the data shows that Hamas is lying. They're embedding themselves within the population. Some of these, not all, but some of these videos of the people being rushed into the hospital are fake. Not all of them, but some of them. And the thing is, you have a complicit media, especially BBC and Al Jazeera, that are placating to Hamas.
By Hamas, but also by the medics who work at the hospital. Yesterday, interestingly, the US, for the first time, came out and said that it had its own intelligence sources corroborating those claims from the Israelis. We haven't seen any sort of visual proof up to now made public that this is the case. But the White House also said that hospitals and patients must be protected. And we think that within the Shifa hospital right now, there are, accounts vary, but between 2,000 and 4,000 people. The biggest number are people who went there originally to take shelter, but there are also, of course, doctors and patients who are being treated, some of them very vulnerable, including more than 30 premature babies who were taken off of out of incubators because of the lack of power. And that's been a big focus of international concern, with suggestions they could be evacuated that haven't really come to any fruition. Israel has been saying consistently that it is willing to allow staff and patients to flee from the Shifa hospital in recent days, because this standoff has been going on for some time. But what Palestinians have said is that Israeli forces fired at some of those people who were leaving, that it was too dangerous also to move those most vulnerable patients.
Well, that was the we shall be for them.
Commercials.
It becomes evening for you. Well, that was the BBC's Yolande now in Jerusalem. Well, for more on this story, let's go live now to Juliet Tuma, Director of Communications for the UN Works and Relief Agency for Palestine refugees. And Juliet, I just want to start by asking you what you make of events happening at Al-Shifa today.
We are watching with horror. We're watching these reports with absolute horror. Medical facilities should be protected at all times, but this is yet
medical facilities should be protected, but Hamas has dug in, and they're using the hospital, not just the surrounding perimeter of the hospital, but using the hospital as a strategic point. That is a war crime. But we'll hear on BBC and we'll hear on Al Jazeera on how Israel is causing all this, destruction at the hospital. Hamas did this on purpose to try to demonize in the mainstream media operations to seek and destroy and to kill Hamas. But I'm sure the director of communication of the UNWRA that's speaking on the BBC right now isn't going to say a damn word about that. The Palestinians have had 15 years to root out Hamas. They didn't do it. They actually let them dig in further. And oh, by the way, NGOs that are supported directly or indirectly by the UNWRA help to hide the damn tunnels underneath the hospital, such as the Indonesian hospital in Gaza. No one's talking about that.
times, but this is yet another indication that no place is safe, and no place, including civilian infrastructure like hospitals, like UN facilities, they've not been spared during this war.
And Juliet, I want to ask you about something specifically to do with the UN in Gaza.
She's on BBC. Don't you think that someone that's supposed to try to save lives because she works for an organization that's tied to the UN, don't you think that she would take the time to actually say, Hamas, stop using these hospitals as a shield, as a way to hide from the enemy, so we save the babies? No, she didn't do that. No, of course not. Because everything has to be Israelis' fault.
With the UN in Gaza, we're getting reports from Reuters news agency that a humanitarian aid source, has said Israel has given approval for 24,000 liters of diesel fuel to be used by trucks for UN operations in the Gaza Strip. Can you confirm this?
No, I cannot confirm this. I, like you, saw the Reuters report, and I can confirm that no fuel has come into Gaza to date. Per the statement that we put out last night, we confirmed that no fuel has come into Gaza since the war began. It's been 5 weeks now, and in fact, we at UNRWA are on the verge of having it.
But the BBC and France 24 stated that the Israelis dropped off liters of fuel for the incubators. Huh? What's the story, honey? Oh, it's from the southern entrance with Egypt. See, this is the problem with the stories that are going on the BBC and especially on Al Jazeera. They don't tell you the details. There's always a missing detail. There's a comma, but. There's death and destruction at the hospital, comma, but. Hamas is dug in, and by the way, most likely has hostages in the basement. I'll tell you, Israel needs to kick ass.
Of having a significant reduction in our operations, and in some cases, if we do not get fuel, we will be forced to stop some of our operations that are life-saving.
But are there ongoing negotiations? Is there a possibility that an announcement could come soon, allowing you to get fuel?
Life-saving. Life-saving for who? Buying time for Hamas to be able to regroup and fight IDF? Or life-saving to save the Palestinians, especially the babies in the hospital? Because I didn't hear you say too much about trying to transport the pediatric patients from the hospital out of Gaza onto, into safe havens, like MASH units, to stabilize the pediatrics. No, we don't want to talk about that. Which lives are you saving, honey?
Allowing you to get fuel into the Gaza Strip.
There has been negotiations for many, many long weeks now about the issue of fuel. It is very simple. Fuel has been used as a weapon of war in Gaza. People have been deprived of basic services due to the lack of fuel. We at UNRWA have been calling to get an urgent shipment of fuel for the past 3 weeks, and it has been falling on deaf ears. And this is obviously putting a lot of pressure on us as the largest humanitarian agency to do our work. Without fuel, we cannot work. It's very simple. It's very, very simple.
Just tell us about the humanitarian situation in Gaza.
It's very, very simple. Keep Hamas out of the hospital so IDF doesn't have to go into hospital and root them out. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. Dumbass.
Situation in Gaza. We know what's happening in the north, the ongoing fighting. In the south, we hear it was a particularly rainy night, and it was quite difficult for a lot of people there in Gaza overnight.
Yes, look, the rain is going to make really desperate situation far worse, including for people who have been displaced, which is now more than 3/4 of the Gaza population. They have been forced to leave their homes. 800,000 of those are in UNRWA shelters. They are overcrowded. We do not have fuel, again, so we cannot provide things like heating or clean water. This is why it's absolutely critical that fuel comes in, and it's not a one-off shipment, by the way. There needs to be shipments of fuel.
Oh, by the way, there are 300 miles of tunnels, not just in the north, but in the southern part of Gaza. Why don't they store people there? Why don't they house them there so they don't get rained on? It's very, very simple. Very, very simple. All right. CNN, this is with Wesley Clark, who's aging. I think Wesley Clark was a general. Again, another general that didn't win a war, got a lot of participation medals, commanded the NATO, I think during Clinton's administration. This is the problem with the US. A lot of generals that go with their golden parachutes to Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, do the lecture circuit on CNN, and they didn't win a fucking war. Why? Because we have politicians constantly pushing for just give peace a chance with a ceasefire. Yet each war that we get further down the road costs us more. We're in the trillions now in spending money since 9/11. Trillions. I don't know, it's like $4 or $5 trillion in the war effort. And we didn't get the job done. This is my thesis. Get the job done. It's cheaper, there's less death and destruction. Instead of thinking that a Westphalian policy for ceasefire and that there's going to be some sort of normalization will take hold in the Middle East. This is a battle of soul roots. Mark my words on this. I am not wrong. This is a battle on soul roots. And it's a battle of Western civilization and a caliphate. Which one do you want? Do we want to replay and lose the Crusades? because the Christians lost the Crusades. And if they didn't lose the Crusades, we wouldn't have this problem. Since this is PNN, which is a lot better than CNN, I have to go to commercial. Please get your structural nano silver soap so you don't smell like a crazy freaking ultra liberal that promotes abortions but wants to demonize what's going on in the Middle East, trying to root out terrorism and the collateral damage that that causes. Get my structural nano silver soap. I have 5 different varieties. It neutralizes pathogens. Why? Because it's structural nano silver. And it won't make you smell like an ultra liberal. Also get my magnesium and zinc. You need to take magnesium and zinc to boost your immune system on a regular basis. If you are feeling sick, take a double dose of it. It'll help to clear the cold. We're in the cold season all the way through March. So stock up and boost up your immune system. When you listen to my broadcast, I am sure that your blood pressure is up. And you need to take care of your cardiovascular health. The best way to do that is to go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and improve your lipid profile to lower your chances of cardiovascular disease. How do you do that? You take omega-3. Go to my store, get omega-3, and improve your lipid profile. What you want to do is increase your HDL and lower your LDL. Take omega-3 to help improve your cardiovascular health and your lipid profile. Lastly, because the news is so disappointing out there, because it's so biased and no one's telling you what's really going on, everyone's got an agenda, everyone's playing to the emotional fallacy and not being consistent with their philosophical foundation, you can't sleep. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get my Good Night formula. It has tryptophan and melatonin in it. What that will do, if you take it on a regular basis, is it'll allow you to get the 3 REM cycle sleeps that you need to detoxify your body, to consolidate memory, and to be more energetic in the morning. And by doing that, you're going to slow down your aging process. Take my advice. You want to improve your health? Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. This is PNN.
Need to be of military necessity. They're a little bit, just from a military standpoint, in all wars, when there are civilians around and there are targets of that are believed to be of military necessity, there are calculations essentially done about how valuable is the target, what is the risk of civilian loss, and how much civilian loss is acceptable. And these are horrible calculations but these are calculations that armies make during a war. A situation like this, operating on the grounds in a hospital, has got to be extraordinarily difficult.
Sure, and you're exactly right, Anderson, about the way you cast it. You know what the target is, you know how valuable it is, you try to estimate what the risks are of hurting civilians, and then you have to make the judgment of whether the target, going after the target, taking out the target, is worth the risk of injuring people who are innocent and not part of the enemy force. But here you're dealing with the command and control node of Hamas. You're dealing with Hamas that has deliberately, cynically located its most valuable assets in a hospital, deliberately to try to provoke outrage in the world community and discredit Israel. Israelis know this. They've got really great intel on this. when those soldiers go in armored vehicles first and then dismounted into the buildings, and it is a very complex compound, as you saw from the overhead cover. They'll have helicopters, they'll have drones overhead, they'll be able to mark enemy positions with lasers, they'll be able to deliver precise fire if there is an opponent there. And then they've got to go inside. And if Hamas is there, yes, there could be a shootout in a hospital corridor, and they're going to have to get to the bottom of it, and they're going to have to search for the tunnel entrances around it. So at every step, the soldier on the ground, the tank commander and so forth, is at risk. He's putting himself out there. He's likely to draw fire. He has the right to self-defense no matter what, always. And he's going to respond if he is attacked. But he's got a lot of assets back him up, a lot of other eyes on the battlefield. So it's everything that can possibly be done to protect civilians and still go after the command and control at the hospital. And the Israelis militarily, they have to do this.
One of the things I'm surprised there's not more outrage out internationally.
Pardon me, Anderson Cooper. Dr. Paul Cottrell is going to speak because this is PNN. Hamas is from the soul root of Esau and Ishmael, but let's just focus on Esau for a moment here. Esau is a murderer. Esau is a killer. And the only way that you can handle these types of people is to completely annihilate them. Again, if we placate to Western powers trying to promote a ceasefire, it's not going to root out Hamas. Now, there are going to be people going, well, what are you going to do, after the fact? The Palestinian people are going to have to do self-governance. They have been picking poor policy leaders, poor government officials that are fleecing them constantly. These people that are running the Palestinian government are living like kings in Qatar and in Turkey. Do they really want peace when they can just keep on fleecing from the international community every time there's a surge of violence? No, you have to decapitate the Palestinian leadership. And there needs to be true self-governance. And if the Palestinians can't get their act together, then there's going to be more war and destruction. It's very simple. It's very simple.
Internationally about is that Hamas had 2 years, say, to preparing this attack, or a year, however long it was. We don't know the exact amount of time that they've been preparing, but certainly they've been preparing for quite some time. They have not made any effort to build any bomb shelter for any civilian, it seems, in the Gaza Strip. They built tunnels for themselves to store supplies and weapons and to protect themselves. But there are not bomb shelters, even the kind of shelters that you see on the sides of the road in Israel by bus stops to protect against rockets. Those don't exist on the streets.
I can tell you why, Anderson Cooper. That's because Ishmael doesn't give a shit about his people. He's a murderer. And same thing with Esau. Esau is the twin brother of Jacob. Well, Jacob, comes, that soul root is Israel. And Esau is coming from that murderous side that is, tied to Islam. But, it's mixed with Ishmael. That's why. They're different soul roots. One's more caring and the other one is just all about death and destruction. But in the media, and all these anti-Israelis out there and the ultra-liberal, they'll keep on trying to demonize Jews. It's okay, because mark my words, good will prevail. So you got to decide, which side are you going to be on? You're going to be on the ultra-liberal bullshit side that actually kills a bunch of babies in the womb since the 1970s and trying to enshrine it in constitutions like Ohio or are you going to be on the side of good? It's a battle of it's a battle of good and evil. It's a battle of good and evil, and this conflict is different. It's not the normal run of the mill conflict that is going on in the Middle East the last 10, 15 years. This is different because of what happened right after Simchas Torah.
Exist on the streets of Gaza. In your military experience, have you seen many countries or territories with a military that does not prepare or have some sort of safe harbor for its civilians?
Well, no, but on the other hand, Hamas deliberately wants these civilians to be at risk.
Well, that's the point, yes. But I still find it stunning that doesn't seem to register with a lot of people.
Well, the thing about it, Anderson, is we call Hamas a terrorist organization, but it's actually the government of this Gaza Strip. They're in charge of everything.
Right, and they have received hundreds of millions of dollars from Qatar and other places, and they have not built any bomb shelters for their people.
Because they're murderers.
Because they're not interested in protecting their people. They're interested in provoking international outrage against Israel. They knew that when they launched this attack, and they hope to draw Israel in, bog Israel down, cause a lot of casualties, do exactly what they're doing with world opinion, have a lot of voices out there saying, ceasefire, 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 and try to stop the Israeli assault and then declare victory. That's the goal. And so the more civilian casualties that the Israelis inflict, even though they don't want to inflict
This is why, because Netanyahu doesn't have anything to lose, his political career is over, even if the war goes good. Because there's too many actual crazy ultra liberals, even on the Jewish side, in Israel. Like I said, everyone is getting cursed because mankind is not doing what it should be. And it's moving in a direction that is very antithetical to Torah principles and the Bible. And until we come to grips with that, we're going to start having more and more destruction. And there's a curse that has been pushed down from above, and everyone's being judged. Are you going to get on the right side, or are you going to get on the wrong side? And we're seeing the disentanglement that has taken place in modernity. That this disentanglement of the good and evil, and it's being separated so a blessing can come down, but there's a curse first, and then there's a blessing wrapped up in it. And depending on what side you're on, depends on how much of that blessing you're going to get. It's very simple.
Don't want to inflict any, the greater Hamas believes its chances of success.
And Nick, it's accurate to say that the health officials in Gaza have denied repeatedly that Al-Shifa hospital or others are being used by Hamas for any, I don't even want to call it military purposes, because for any of their own purposes.
They have, and it's something health officials in Gaza, Hamas-run health officials say is true for other hospitals there. We've been speaking, CNN has been speaking with officials from the hospital over the last few days, and just going through our latest information on that. It appears the most recent, over the past couple of days, data that we have from the hospital itself, from Al-Shifa hospital. They say there are about 7,000 civilians taking refuge there, or there were until recently. It's not clear how many of those might have left, and about 1,500 staff, 100 or so doctors, other medical officials, and included in that 1,500, of course, several hundred patients as well as sort of support staff in the hospital. So it's still a big
This is PNN, and breaking news: Trump files for mistrial in New York. Back to CNN.
hospitals. So it's still a big complex, a complex complex, and it still appears a significant number of people working there. You would have to assume that these health officials would have knowledge of the whole complex. There's a lot of people there, and would have knowledge of the nooks and crannies of it, if you will. There wouldn't be places that they wouldn't know about within the hospital complex. So they continue to say Hamas isn't there.
But I mean, that's the ensuring thing about operating.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who has reported from Gaza knows. I mean, you see rockets being fired from civilian areas. You see rockets being fired from, the building where you're the building. Last time I was in Gaza, I can see where rockets are being fired from in buildings nearby me. People, even the doctors in the hospitals know Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and others are firing rockets over their hospitals, but they don't speak out about it because they don't want to get killed.
Let's get to the real nuts and bolts of this, Anderson Cooper. All right. If the Israelis lose and the caliphate actually starts to gain momentum in the Middle East, along northern Africa, and into Europe, do you really think that you're going to have a nice life? Because their Sharia law would throw you off of a fucking building. Why? Because you're a homosexual. So all these ultra liberals out there that have been promoting a bunch of bullshit that has been moving away from Torah principles and biblical principles, it's eating. The ultra liberal is eating itself alive. You got to get right with making sure that the family unit is strong. You have to, start, building policies within government that is strengthening the borders, stabilizing the currency, taking care of infrastructure, following the precepts of the Bible and the Torah, instead of, placating to, the ultra liberal crowd, thinking that, well, I just want to be modern. Then don't be surprised that a caliphate starts up.
Killed. I mean, nobody speaks out against Hamas for fear of their own safety. That maybe they agree with Hamas, maybe they don't, and a lot of people don't in Gaza, don't like Hamas, but people don't speak out. But people know
it's not just
they know
the Palestinians; it's the ultra liberal in the United States. It's actually the ultra liberal in Israel. That's also the problem. Half of the people in Israel don't follow the Torah. Half the people in Israel want to carve up more of the land and give it to the Palestinians. You really think that's going to play well if we're moving into a messianic age? I don't think so.
So, they know where the tunnels locations are or where the rockets are being fired from. You can see it.
And this is, in a nutshell, people are scared. I mean, when Hamas was voted in by the electorate in Gaza to power in 2006, 2007, they went round throwing out windows of high buildings to political opposition, and they might have won an election in 2006, but they've maintained control ever since through fear and intimidation. They might have a hardcore base of supporters there who genuinely believe in them, but the vast majority of people would not want to speak out against them, would fear speaking out against them. Like you, Anderson, I've been to Gaza and had those private conversations away from cameras with people who will tell you precisely that we are too afraid to speak out. Hamas has done this to me.
The last time I was there, I watched as Hamas, two guys on motorbikes, dragged two human beings along on the ground their legs tied together with rope or chains to the motorbikes, and they were dragging them through the streets as a warning to other people. I don't know what those people have been accused of, but they were Palestinians and they were dead and they were being.
There are more Palestinians than there are Hamas, even though Hamas has the weapons. If you really love your country, you will sacrifice for the children, for the future generations. And if they really wanted to have a better future, the Palestinians, they should have had a civil war with Hamas, but they didn't do it. They didn't do it. You know, because what it is, it's egoism. They care more about their life than the future generation's life for peace and prosperity. And we probably saw that during the last crisis, because everyone was so worried about themselves, they didn't want to get to the root cause and shut down the facilities that were researching and making the biologics. Egoism will always get you. You boil this all down, and it's a philosophical foundation of egoism. Are you going to sacrifice for a future generation to have peace and prosperity or not, Palestine and the Palestinians? Are you going to do that? Are you going to do that? No, you don't want to do it. And sadly, a lot of Americans, fall in egoism too. Everyone in America wants to be, fat, dumb, and happy.
Dead, and they were being dragged. They were accused probably of being collaborators, and they dragged them through the streets as a warning to everybody else to stay silent and to not, collaborate. We're over time. Nick Robertson, thank you. General Wesley Clark, thank you as well.
That was CNN. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Fox News. This is Ron DeSantis. I haven't seen this. It's about 6 minutes long. So, I don't know what to expect, but this is Ron DeSantis talking about, this was published 4 hours ago. The subtitle is, there will be no Gaza refugees. I don't know the context of this. So let's jump into this. This is PNN.
Who is also a candidate, obviously, for the GOP nomination for his party. And he joins me now. Governor DeSantis, it's always good to have you with us.
Governor DeSantis, Mr.
What is
Skull and
your
Bones.
thought on this rally? And is this something that you would attend and want to be part of?
I think it's great to see, because as you pointed out, we've seen some really, really troubling demonstrations over the last few weeks. I mean, I was struck by, with the blood not even being dried on the victims in Israel, you had people on college campuses celebrating Hamas terrorism. And I know these universities are very left. I've been in the halls of them in the past, but I think to have students celebrating terrorism was something that I would not have even predicted, even having a low opinion of the culture there. And I think the anti-Semitism that we've seen come to the surface has been really, really troubling in Florida. We've taken a lot of action against that. My first year as governor, we signed legislation to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses. We've provided security for Jewish day schools. We have strong anti-BDS legislation. We viewed this as a problem for a long time, but 6 weeks ago, if you would have predicted to me that it was this bad, I would not have believed that, because I think what is chilling about it is being done with the imprimatur of some of these august institutions. They are viewing this as something that is consistent with their university's mission. I know the White House, for example, as Jewish students have been running for their lives on college campuses, they've launched an initiative to combat Islamophobia. But that's not what we're seeing in society. We're seeing this virulent anti-Semitism. So seeing that pro-Israel demonstration now.
I'll get to the root cause. I'll get to the right to the root of this. All right. There is a curse that is coming down that happened on Simchas Torah and that God is setting in motion for us to get our house in order, our individual houses in order, our personal, reflection on how we can become better people, and that society is being judged. And there's going to be a disentanglement between good and evil. And the ones that repent, the ones that decide to start following the precepts of the Bible and of the Torah, are going to get a blessing. This is not your normal conflict. And God is allowing the ultra-liberal and the ultra-liberal establishments to hang themselves. And all you have to do is just watch how it's eating, how the logic is eating themselves alive. You know, they want to protect the babies in the hospital and in the Indonesian hospital in Gaza, or Al-Shifa or whatever it's called, hospital, but they'll promote baby killing in the womb. 60 million baby killing in the womb, you know, with abortions. They want to say that, you know, we have to, you know, we have to be more kinder to the Palestinian cause, but yet the Palestinians aren't willing to fight for their own country and root out Hamas. So I think what we are seeing here is actually the implosion of ultra-liberal society. And because it is permeated through our country, the United States, and in other countries like in Europe, it's going to be disruptive. These people, they want to destroy capitalism. These people want to destroy the family unit. These people want to destroy language. They want to tell you on how to use certain pronouns. Or if you don't say it the proper way, then maybe you should get a ticket. Maybe you should get a penalty. These people are crazy, and they're antithetical to biblical and Torah principles. And that's what's happening here. This is coming down from above. There's a curse on everybody, no matter how good or how bad you were. You're getting cursed because you didn't do enough to stop this crazy train. But through repenting, by improving yourself and improving your society, you're going to get a blessing. This is a battle of conservatism versus ultra-liberal, between Jacob and Esau, between peace and destruction. What do you want?
That pro-Israel demonstration now, I think is a good sign. I just noticed how peaceful everybody is. I don't see them burning any American flags. I don't see there any violence. They're just people that are there to celebrate a good ally.
You know, we were just
DeSantis, who I don't like, but he makes a great point. You had all these ultra-liberals promoting Hamas, promoting the Palestinian cause, demonizing Israel and the Jews, and they were burning down the town, taking down American flags, burning them. You want to support that kind of bullshit? I'm telling you, the ultra-liberal is the root cause of the problem, besides Esau being a murderer.
A good ally.
You know, we were just speaking with the panel about where all of this comes from and how America seems to have changed dramatically in terms of what we're seeing. And as Philippe said, you know, he had no idea that if you scratch the surface, there was going to be so much anti-Semitism so close to the surface. And people are going to have a lot of different ideas about how that should be fixed. And you want to be president of the United States. And I want to play this soundbite for you. And it's from the former president, because it's a strong statement. And I want to know how you feel about what he said and what you would do differently if you become president. So let's play this. This is from
He's not
October
coming president.
We aren't bringing in anyone from Gaza, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, or Libya, or anywhere else that threatens our security. Next, we'll implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants to the United States. No longer will we allow dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs to get residency in our country. We're not going to let them stay here.
Do you agree with
Yes.
those sentiments? Some of them, part of it?
Well, I was the first one to say no Gaza refugees as a presidential candidate. And I've also said that because if you look at some of the student protests, places like MIT have said those have been driven by students on foreign visas. And I said very clearly as president, I'm canceling those visas and sending them home if they're making common cause with Hamas. You do not have a right to come to this country as a foreigner. It is a privilege to be able to come to this country as a foreigner. We need to look to Europe to see what they've done wrong in the past 10 or 15 years, where you now have massive numbers of people that basically reject Western values and are bringing a lot of this anti-Semitism to the fore. So part of the thing with
it's not just anti-Semitism. Trust me, these ultra liberals that are promoting Palestine and Hamas and being anti-Israeli, they're going after the Christians. Mark my words on this. The Jews and the Christians are in the same boat. And we need to band together and make sure we destroy that fucking caliphate.
So part of the thing with the Gaza refugees, people said, well, they're not all members of Hamas. Yeah, they're not all members of Hamas. That's true. But if you look at what they teach the kids there, they teach them to hate Jews. The textbooks don't have Israel on the map. They teach them that Israel should be destroyed. So it's a toxic culture. And I think any of these societies that have those toxic cultures, I would not want to import people into the United States. I would also say
it's not just a toxic culture. Their soul root comes from a murderer, Esau. Get it straight, DeSantis. God.
In the United States. I would also say that if you want to come to the United States, you've got to subscribe to the founding principles of this country, and you've got to want to assimilate into this country.
How do you prove
and
that?
If that is
The
not in
former
order,
president
then you're just not going to get in.
Pardon me for interrupting. The former president said he would do ideological testing to figure out the answers to the questions that you just raised. Would you do that?
I think that may be difficult. I mean, what I would say is, if you have a country that has a culture that's hostile to kind of the American way of life, I would just say don't bring in people from that country. I think it's hard to parcel out who's kind of a freedom fighter, who may be somebody that doesn't have good intentions coming to the country. So I would err on the side of caution. I would have it be a high bar for people to be able to come if there's a risk of any type of security. But I think to say this person's good, that person's not, I would just say, look, if you're from like Gaza, that's why I said Gaza, I just don't want to mess with that. And so we're just not going to do it. I don't think you can separate in a place like that. I think you just say, you know what, we're not going to do it. And you know what, their neighbors.
There may be actually a lot of wisdom in what he's saying, because the other Muslim communities, the other countries around Israel, they don't even want the Palestinians. Wonder why.
And you know what? Their neighbors don't do that. Egypt won't take, Saudi won't take, Jordan won't take. So we just need to be conscious of what we're importing, and we should not be importing any problems. Anyone that comes into this country should be a benefit to the American people, the American way of life. And if that's not the case, then it doesn't happen.
All right. Governor DeSantis, sort of a unique day as we're watching this on the Mall. So we appreciate you joining us, and I hope you'll come back soon. We can talk more about what's going on the campaign trail, because I know you're spending a lot of time in Iowa. You got an endorsement from Kim Reynolds, the governor there. So we'll come back soon, and we'll talk about what's going on the campaign trail as well, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Many thanks. Governor DeSantis of Florida, great to have him.
He's not becoming president. No way. Either they're going to flip the election and it's going to go to a Democrat, or it's going to be Trump. And then maybe we'll start kicking ass. All right, this is I-24 news. So let's drop into that. But before we drop in, because this is PNN and I have to do a commercial, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and start getting some of the supplements that I offer. If you follow my anti-aging protocol to be able to boost up your immune system, you're going to actually get healthier and you're actually going to slow down the aging process. All right. I am older than Alex Jones. All right. Not much older, but I am older than Alex Jones. Alex Jones looks 15 years older than I am. Do you really want to follow his lead in terms of getting yourself healthy? What about Dave Hodges? You really want to age with Dave? Really? Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow my anti-aging protocol. It works. It'll help to boost up your immune system. It's going to slow down the aging process, and you're going to be a lot healthier, and you're going to have a lot more energy. Because, you know, it takes a lot of energy to be watching all this bullshit news and tell you what the real story is. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get lignans. Lignans is a powder. I take it every day. I take it during lunchtime. I mix it with a probiotic, but you don't have to do that. But what this does is it boosts your immune system. It'll also help with your hormonal health for males and females. All right. And what that will do is it'll get your body closer to homeostasis. And when you have a better immune system, you'll have better natural killer cells. You'll have better CD8 plus cells to go and seek out cancer. So if you have a better immune system, you reduce your chances for cancer. And guess what? Guess what? The last crisis that we just went through, in the post era, cancers are going up. I wonder why. I have probably about 50 videos on why that is. Just follow my lead and you'll be all right. Silver gel. It neutralizes pathogens. We're in the cold season. Use this, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, lightly coat your nostrils and your ear canal, around your ears, around your eyes. It'll stay active for 5 hours. It'll neutralize pathogens, reduce your chance of catching a cold. All right. It also is a skincare product. You can put it on your skin, keep it on overnight. You exfoliate in the morning, and it's going to improve your skin. If you add vitamin C, drink 64 ounces of water that's filtered, and take collagen, then what's going to happen is you're going to improve your skin even more because you're working on the dermal layer. Now, that is my commercial for PNN. Thank you for listening. And now we're going to drop into I-24 News. Let's see what's happening there. This was published 2 hours ago.
An ongoing IDF operation inside the Shifa hospital in Gaza City. The Red Cross and the World Health Organization say they're deeply concerned. This hospital has been identified as a Hamas command center by Israel, a claim supported by the United States. We're looking at footage of a firefight between Hamas terrorists and IDF troops at the entrance to the hospital. Shots being fired from inside the hospital. The IDF has also released this footage showing its troops bringing humanitarian aid to Shifa. The IDF says it is mounting a precise and targeted operation against Hamas.
Didn't we just see on the BBC that woman was saying, you know what? There's no supplies going to the hospital. No supplies. Israel's so bad. It's very simple.
Operation against Hamas in a specified area within the hospital, searching for Hamas infrastructure and weapons. Let's get the very latest on that now. We can go to southern Israel. We're joined by our correspondent Pierre Cochendler. Pierre, what is the latest?
Well, an official security source told I-24 News that there are no battles inside that specified location on the western side of the compound of Shifa Hospital. No battle, but the soldiers are combing the area room after room, floor after floor in order to find weapons caches and Hamas assets. That's the terminology that they employ, Hamas assets. And it seems they found some of the weapons, some of those assets, but no traces of the hostages. And they're still looking for it. Now, another security source, Israeli security source, said earlier that if need be, this targeted operation will be expanded to other buildings in the compound. This is a very large compound. It's one of the probably the largest hospital in the whole Gaza Strip. So because they're working surgically, so to speak, and calming the area, that will take time. And it's, in a sense, a mirror image of the whole ground offensive during which the IDF forces progressed very carefully in a very measured way in order to save IDF soldiers' lives and also in order to prevent too many non-involved population casualties. So at the hospital, which is really a symbol of the humanitarian predicament of the Palestinians, they're taking really a lot of precautions in order not to have any casualties. There are probably something like 500 medical personnel inside the hospital, 1,000 to 1,500 displaced Palestinians that seek refuge in the hospital compound, as well as about 650 patients. Amongst them, 37 premature newborns who desperately need incubator because Egypt is undertaking an effort to transfer those babies to Egyptian territory, and thus these incubators will be very, very important for the babies to stay alive and be sent to Egypt to a safe haven. Apart from that, there is still heavy bombing in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, but there are humanitarian pauses at the same time.
I need to explain something to the audience on what he's saying about the incubators. And it's an emotional fallacy that's playing out here with this whole pediatric bullshit. All right? Now, we have to keep in mind that there are certain births that can be problematic, and some of those pediatric patients, those newborns, may have life-threatening disease or a condition or whatever. Some. Not many, though. All right? Maybe out of a ward, maybe one or two that were like that. Some of them are going to be preemies, premature babies. All right? And there are different degrees of prematureness. You know, gestation normally takes, 40 weeks, right? So if it's 39 weeks, it's not that much of a problematic situation. You start moving into 35 weeks or 28 weeks, then you got a problem, all right? I'd be curious to know how many preemies there are. I don't think there are that many. But let's just say out of 10, all right, maybe 3 or 4, all right? Maybe, all right? And they're probably closer to the early stage. They're closer to full term. So they're probably 38, 39, 37, all right? So if you follow this, more than 50% of the children that are in the hospital don't even need the incubators. Mankind didn't have incubators for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And their children were okay. So there's an emotional fallacy here that all of the newborns have to have an incubator. all the newborns are in critical care. That's total horseshit. There are some, and those can be extremely problematic and need care and incubators and you know, medical supplies and everything. But to say that they're all, you know what? Most children that are born, they can be given to the mother right away. They start breastfeeding and they're going to be fine. You wash them up, you know, cut the cord, you know, and let them be. And it's been like that for thousands of years.
Time in two of the Jabalia refugee camp quarters, As-Salam and Al-Nur, there are humanitarian pauses from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. in an hour from now. The same humanitarian corridor, Salah ad-Din access, crossing east of Gaza City towards the south, is open for 7 hours from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the residents of many of Gaza City are urged by the IDF and by the coordinator of activities vis-à-vis the Palestinians to leave the areas where they live and to join the cohort of displaced Palestinians that are looking for a safe haven in the south.
All right, Pierre, thank you very much indeed. Pierre Cochender there with the
the enemy would kidnap. After brutally murdering 1,400 with that massacre, holding them underground in Gaza. The IDF is entering and fighting terror. Well, it's their known arena, it's their home, so they are familiar with I would say, the obstacles on the ground. And, you know, the IDF should be prepared with surprises. So instead of being focused only as an army operationally, instead of being focused only on the operational needs, strategy, tactics, the IDF is dealing with fighting the enemy, sending aid.
So Al Jazeera is saying that 11,320 Palestinians killed and 29,000 injured in Israeli strikes. I would like to know why Al Jazeera doesn't separate the Palestinians and Hamas. Are they the same or are they different? I mean, I'm just an American. I'd like to know that.
In the enemy, sending aid, talking to people, sending warnings, walking tiptoes on eggs. You know, it's a fragile war. That's how I will define it. And it's incomprehensible to do things like that in a battle zone. It's a war that we are facing, okay? It's a brutal enemy that we are trying to eliminate and to release our civilians. And yet, because of this unfortunate reality of the state of Israel, that we suffer from delegitimacy from all over the world, and people do not understand, I believe, the reality. Not all of them, some of them. We need to do all those things. And it's like, you know, dancing between drops of rockets, if I would say so.
Well, let's hear it from a Palestinian himself, because the Al Jazeera network on its Arab channel did a live interview inside one of the hospitals with a Palestinian man. You can take a listen to that now.
وبعدين بالنسبه للمقابل اللي تيجي بتخبى بين الناس، ليش تخبى بين الناس؟ يروح بجهنم يتخبى، يعني هذه شهادات من المواطنين بسبب يعني.
This is how much money YouTube has been paying me for a brand new YouTube channel that only has 400 subscribers. A lot of people don't.
He was referring to Hamas. He called them the resistance, which is the translation of Hamas. So then we hear it from the Palestinians themselves. They know that Hamas embeds itself within the civilian infrastructure. Not the case for the UN humanitarian chief Martin Griffiths, tweeting this morning that he's appalled by the operation inside Shifa. The Red Cross, the World Health Organization have also condemned Israel for what's going on there. The United States, though, it has to be
here's
said,
the problem. Here's again the problem with Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and, all these NGOs and the UN and the World Health Organization, even ultra liberals that are in our government in the United States and in France, even ultra liberals in Israel. The problem is that they always placate to terrorists. Get the job done, fuck up Hamas, fuck up Hezbollah, and fuck up Iran. If not, it's going to get worse. Don't be an ultra-liberal.
States, though, it has to be said, and also the EU has accepted that Hamas does use hospitals as a place to base their operations.
Well, I know Shifa person, yeah.
Which is a war crime. But Al Jazeera won't say that. And we'll go into Al Jazeera after I-24. Because Al Jazeera is such a non-biased news organization. This is PNN.
Well, I know Shifa person, yeah. I've been there. I've been there in my past, in my past career. I helped them even to build the hospital, some of the buildings, so I know it well. Many places, many departments. And yes, during the years of my service at the IDF, we always dealt with this. We've been getting this intelligence, this information that Hamas are building their headquarters underneath hospitals, and especially Shifa. And it's not something new. And it's like, the feeling is that we need to justify our credibility again and again and again. And even after only yesterday or 2 days ago, the IDF spokesman personally entered Turantissi Hospital, and the whole world saw that they are using the hospital as a military, base.
And like I have said multiple times, the Indonesian hospital in 2010 was built on top of an existing tunnel network of Hamas on purpose that was used by NGO money. NGOs actually built the fucking hospital to hide the terrorist tunnels. And we're supposed to take the word of the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, the WHO, and all these fucking cocksuckers. Shit. I cannot believe, how stupid can people be?
Base or a base of operations. So what else do we need to prove to the world?
Well, do you think that the IDF is doing enough to get the information out to the world? We saw, of course, yesterday, or the night before yesterday, the IDF spokesman, Daniel Hagari, went in with cameras underground to the Rantisi hospital, which Israel now controls, showing not only weapons, but also possibly evidence of where the hostages were held.
Well, the problem is with
breaking news on Al Jazeera. Hamas says it holds U.S. President Joe Biden fully responsible for raid on Al-Shifa hospital. You know why that they're saying that on Al Jazeera? Because they want to hide that they actually use the hospital as a weapons depot, as a place to potentially be a hub to hold the hostages. That's being investigated, but there's becoming high probability that happened. Maybe it didn't, but they're investigating it. They're shooting out the window at the IDF. I'm pretty sure the MDs don't have AK-47s, as they're doing the rounds, in the pediatric ward. Fuck.
The reality that the IDF or the government of Israel faces. Okay, now let's look at it from an operational perspective. Okay, just let's go back. We announced to the management of Shifa that we are about to surround them. We announced them yesterday that we are about to enter. Okay, so what do you think that Hamas would do if they know that the goal, that the mission of the IDF is to surround Shifa, to enter? I'm sure that they, for the last 2 weeks, they cleaned whatever they could clean underground. Number two, there are certain informations that I believe the IDF can share. And some of the information you cannot share because then you will expose your sources. So it's a building dilemma. So on one hand, you want to show everybody. On the other hand, if you do some of those things, you will expose yourself.
Are you encouraged by the fact that Egypt is now offering to help with the evacuation of some of the patients and the babies inside the hospital?
It's not in Egypt. There is another country. I think Dubai also sending the field hospital. Qatar is also sending the field hospital. They understand pragmatically that eventually the idea.
My understanding, they're also that France is sending a naval hospital ship in the region too.
Eventually, the IDF will enter, the patients will leave, the IDF will have to fight with Hamas, we will need to release the people who were kidnapped, and the patients will be treated on field hospitals, as simple as it is.
So this will be a long and complicated battle. How long do you think it will be?
It's going to be long. Only in Shifa or the
Shifa?
I believe it's going to take at least a week and a half.
It's a huge compound, you say?
Yeah, it's a huge compound, of course. Let's not forget the information that the IDF holds that are 5 stores on the ground. So it's quite a large one. This is the major headquarters.
The IDF already has detailed information about the tunnels underneath, about the plan of the building, etc.
Well, there was a previous operation before the IDF surrounded the Shifa. Let's not forget, there is around Shifa, there's some sort of a dahya, if I may use this term from Lebanon. So all the neighborhood around Shifa was a neighborhood full of headquarters. So the IDF entered for the last 2 weeks and cleaned, all those places, or many tunnels. Now, when you hear sometimes that there is explosives and they sound like a belt, or you see it like a belt, it's to make sure that the tunnels that connect the areas that you want to enter are collapsing, so they will not be able to smuggle the thing that they want to smuggle. So it's an operation that started, I believe, 3 weeks ago. The moment the IDF entered in a purpose, or in advance, knowing that that will be the situation.
Talk to me about the humanitarian corridors that Israel has been supervising and overseeing for 3 or 4 hours daily. They've been kind of guarding a route so that civilians in northern Gaza can move south.
In some places it's 4 hours, in some places it's 8 hours and 6 hours.
But it started with just a few dozen people.
It started at the beginning when the IDF entered to Gaza. It started with few dozens, not more than that, that had to cross on the major road. It's called Salah-ad-Din Road, Or if I will connect it to Israel, it's road number 4. It's the same road, that is from Nahariya and down to El-Arish, crossing the Gaza Strip. It's called Salah-ad-Din. And there's a junction there that we used to name it Nesarim Junction. A little bit to the north, this is actually the place or the line that the people were supposed, or they've been asked to cross from the north to the south, so the IDF will minimize casualties or civilians were not involved. At the beginning, of course, not many crossed because Hamas targeted them. Hamas launched mortar shells on those people. I've seen a video of Hamas snipers killing some of those civilians, kids and women. And only after the IDF took control over that junction and control over that road, only then people felt secure enough or that they will be safe enough to cross because they know that the IDF will not open fire on them.
So do you think that's the situation for people inside the hospital now, that some of them just will be too scared to leave?
This is what is happening right now. Actually, the IDF is freeing the people that were obligated to, I don't know, maybe it was their will, or Hamas forced them to stay in Shifa, so they will be their human shield. And what the IDF is doing now is entering from room to room and forcing those people, the civilians, okay, to leave Shifa to the south.
All right, Brighteon, thank you. Stay with us. We're going to go to the north now because Israel, of course, remains watchful and on high alert at its northern border amid the threat from the Iranian-backed terrorist group Hezbollah. Our Pia Steckelback is there for us now. Pia, what's happening?
Well, Laura, it has been a relatively quiet last 24 hours, as quiet as it can be in the current situation here at the Israel-Lebanon border, very tense, very volatile situation. However, we do know that there are reports of Israeli shelling in some communities on the southern Lebanese side of the border there, the communities of Ayat Tashab and Yarin, which are located at the center west part of the Israel-Lebanon border on the Lebanese side there. We've heard some of that shelling earlier today as well. When it comes to the constant shelling coming from southern Lebanon, mortar shells and anti-tank missiles, there were several of them launched towards the Israeli communities of Magdaliot and Metula in the upper eastern part of the GETTR region yesterday, as well as Arab and Aramshe, which again is more towards the center western part of the Israel-Lebanese border. And these are threats that are constantly in place here. We're speaking about dozens of communities that have been evacuated exactly because of that. And this issue has to be addressed also on the level of politics as well. And this is what we've been seeing yesterday, both the defense minister addressing that in his speech, but also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been speaking to local and municipal leaders here in the north yesterday, and also Benny Gantz, the leader of the National Unity Party and the current member of the War Cabinet and the former defense minister. He toured the communities of Kiryat Shmona and Metula yesterday, and he said that the mission is to restore security here in the north as well, and that the country cannot go back to a situation that has been in place on October the 6th, the day before the breakout of the current war. But the issue is there is no current suggestions in terms of how that can be translated or if that will be translated into military action. But we do know that thousands of people here in the north have been evacuated without knowing when they will be able to go back to their homes. And we know that many of them are fearful to do so because the threat that Hezbollah poses sitting right on the Israel-Lebanon border is going to be there even after the war with Gaza is going to end. And this is a threat that has been there also way before. And this has been something that these residents here had to take into account also before. And many of them now demand that there will be some kind of military action against Hezbollah there on the border. If that will be the case, and what exactly is going to be done in order to restore that security here on the northern front, that is a big question mark right now, Laura.
All right, that was I-24 News that was published about 2-3 hours ago. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop into Al Jazeera Live and, comment as we go here, as we've been, doing it. But I need to do a commercial. This is PNN. So please go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. For the ones that are watching, the link is in the description of my videos. So please click the link. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com and purchase the health products that I offer. You follow my protocol and you are going to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system, and have a protective shield against people like Fauci. I have another type of structural nanosilver gel that's in a dispenser, right? This is 35 ppms. You apply it the same way as the other structural nanosilver gel around your face, around your mouth, your nose, lightly coat your nostrils, around your ear canal, around your ears, on your hands. Stays active for about 5 hours. It helps to neutralize pathogens, and you can use it as a skincare product just like the others. We're in the cold season, so the best thing to do is go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges that I have. I have sweet menthol 20-count lozenges. They're structural nanosilver. I also have green apple 20-count. And what that does is it neutralizes pathogens because of the structural nanosilver. And I have drops that are the 100 count that are in honey lemon and in blueberry 100 count. So please go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the drops and the lozenges as we go through cold season in the United States. The cold season doesn't end until March. So please go to the store and prepare for the cold season. Just follow my protocol and you'd also boost up your immune system. I have a great product on my store that is a very strong antioxidant, very potent. It's C60. I have it in 2 ounce, 4 ounce, and an 8 ounce. It's either in coconut oil or avocado oil, whichever you prefer. But it's a very strong antioxidant. You take a teaspoon of it a day. If you get the 2 ounce bottle, you just use a full dropper. You take it every day, and what that does is it reduces the reactive oxygen species, reduces the cellular stress, boosts up your mitochondrial health, and you'll increase ATP. What does that mean? It basically means your cell is healthier and you'll have more energy. If you work out a lot and you take C60 before your workout, you'll recover quicker. Take my advice, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. It'll help to improve your athletic performance, help you to recover quicker, and it'll slow down aging because it's a strong antioxidant. This is P&M. Now we're going to drop into Al Jazeera and the biased news of Qatar.
Moving again, we have had agreements in those negotiations for such a replenishment, but they haven't achieved final approval at the highest levels of the Israeli authorities. So we need that.
This segment is about Gaza fuel shortage.
Decision made. Our role and our pledge and our message is we are right there, sitting in front of those people on the borders of Gaza, in Rafah, ready to go at the right scale if we get the means to do so. We have plans how to do this. We have plans which do not include having people moved into so-called safe zones. We have plans to try to reach people where they are. It is a standard way of operation.
Well, funerals were held in the occupied West Bank and Palestinians killed in Israeli raids. The Israeli army killed at least 7 people in Tulkarem refugee camp on Tuesday. At least 196 Palestinians have been killed in the occupied West Bank since October the 7th. Palestinian refugees in Lebanon say they're worried about their relatives trapped in Gaza. Many say they've been unable to speak to their loved ones since Israel cut telephone and internet networks. Senator Hodder reports from Badawi refugee camp in northern Lebanon.
Families come together, sharing the same predicament. Some Palestinian refugees in Lebanon have loved ones trapped in Gaza. Fatma is a mother who says she hasn't slept since Israel's campaign of bombardment started more than a month ago. Her son, Mohammed Abu Sweira, has been watching the scenes of horror, helpless as he waits for any news about his siblings.
They're living in hell. There's no food, no water. Before Israel bombed the bakeries, they used to wait for hours for a loaf of bread. They're drinking salt water.
Communication has been a problem. Landline, mobile, and internet services more often than not don't work. At times, Mohammed isn't able to speak to his sister for days. It's a story heard time and again, not just here in this refugee camp, but among the millions unable to stay connected with those under siege in Gaza.
Palestinians in Lebanon are survivors and descendants of those who lost their homes and land when the State of Israel was created in 1948. They say the bombing of Gaza is Israel's latest attempt to erase all their hopes for a future Palestinian state.
75 years in exile, 75 years of being stateless. Palestinians have made their voices heard. But they say those who are able to stop what they are calling a genocide in Gaza are not listening. Abu Bakr Zaid's sister, daughter, and grandchildren had to move many times because of the bombardment. They are now at the Rafah border with Egypt, unable to leave.
It's been difficult trying to get them out. Every time I speak to them, they just say, we are still alive.
There's nothing left to say, he says, except that the world, and especially Arab leaders, have condemned the Palestinian people to oblivion. Zena Khadr, Al Jazeera, Northern Lebanon.
Well, that's it for me, Tom McRae. Weather is next. Then Inside Story looks at whether growing pressure will force Joe Biden to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. That's coming up soon.
So that's the news for this segment. I'll do another one, maybe today, definitely tomorrow. But please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the health supplements that I have. I partnered up with Rainbow Herbals. We've created these deodorant bars that help to detox your body. You use it every day. It's in citrus and also in peppermint lavender. You use the deodorant every day, but because of the essential oils from the Himalayas, the high quality of the essential oils, it will help to detoxify your body and help you move towards a healthier you. So please go to the store and get the deodorants that I have on my store. Please subscribe to all my channels. I have 3 YouTube channels, heavily censored because, I covered so much about the last crisis. And make sure you subscribe and you get the notification. You hit the notification bell, but also subscribe to Patreon, Bitchute, and Rumble channels. The links are in the description of this video. So please subscribe to all 6 channels. Also, to help support my news coverage, all my information that I make out there is free. I don't put it behind a paywall at all. And that's because of the support that I have with people buying the products and people donating. So if you would like to help support to make sure that the content that I do is free for everybody, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. On the homepage at the very bottom, there is a Stripe or PayPal donation button. Please donate that way. If you prefer to donate through Buy Me a Coffee, you can click the Buy Me the Coffee link that's in the video description, and you can donate that way. Please subscribe and be a paid member for my Patreon channel. That way it helps support the news coverage. Thank you for listening. Please share the links of my videos. And there are people that were on. We just did the first space simulcast. So thank you for everyone that was in the room. I know some people wanted to talk, but I'm not opening it up for questions yet. But I will. This was basically an experiment to see how the quality of it and everything. But thank you for everyone that was in listening. I really appreciate it. You probably don't agree with me completely, but that's okay. You need people like myself that are willing to push some of the buttons and be a contrarian at times to actually get to the root cause of the problem. But I have very strong stance, and a lot of people will not agree with me, but it's okay. It's all right. The Temple Mount is getting rebuilt in a future time. We are the generation that is going to be part of that stepping stone for that future, and that Israel's borders are going back to biblical times. That includes carving out Jordan, carving out Egypt, carving out Lebanon, and carving out Syria, parts of Syria. All right. What is interesting is that based on certain types of interpretation, the Gaza Strip would not be carved out, and that would remain. But West Bank is going back to Israel. And all of Jerusalem going back to Israel. Now, I take a very strong stance on that. I know that most people don't agree with me on this, but that's okay. All right. But we are at the place we're at because we're moving towards a messianic era. It's up to you. If you want to put your head in the sand and believe that Westphalian policy is going to lead the day, go right ahead. But I think that there is a lot of evidence that is being projected in the news, being projected through just our observation of our times, being projected in our society, that mankind is going the wrong way. The destruction of the family unit, the changing of language, the misgendering of children. We are all moving away from the precepts of the Bible and the Torah. And when you do that, you're moving away from the blessing of God. And we need, I'm not trying to be overly religious, but the point here is that ultra-liberalism has led us down a path of destruction, and the destruction of country and of family. And we need to get back to the middle ground where we protect our country, we protect our children, we protect our family. That's my stance. You may disagree. That's okay. Thank you for listening. Please share the videos, even if you don't like me. It's okay. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.